Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into a really powerful communication technique. It's rooted in Neuro-linguistic Programming, or NLP for short, and it's honestly going to completely change how you handle disagreements. Whether you're navigating a super tough negotiation at work or just trying to resolve a conflict at home, this explainer is going to equip you with a tool that builds immediate, profound trust.
So let's start with a hard truth. Most of us have experienced that deep, incredibly frustrating feeling of being entirely unheard in an argument. You know the feeling, right? You say one thing, the other person hears something entirely different, and suddenly you're trapped in what NLP calls the blame frame. That's where the focus is completely stuck on what's wrong and who's at fault. In those heated moments, ask yourself, are you actually listening to the other person? Or are you just pausing, kind of just waiting for your turn to speak and defend your point?
There's this brilliant quote by Moshe Feldenkrais that perfectly captures the whole essence of our explainer today. He said, "Anytime words alone stop you doing what is important to you, change the words." You see, neuro-linguistic programming is really all about how our thoughts, the neuro part, are affected by our words, the linguistic part, which then leads to our actions and behaviors. So look, if your current style of communication just isn't working and it's stopping you from getting a resolution, well, it's time to swap out your tools.
Section 1. The Communication Gap, Shifting Your Perspective. Let's look at a major shift in how we think about why our messages miss the mark.
Okay, here is a really fascinating presupposition in NLP. The response you get is the meaning of your communication. Wow! It places the responsibility of getting the message across squarely on you, the communicator. Basically, this means that no matter how honorable or incredibly clear your intentions might be, the true success of your interaction depends entirely on how the listener actually receives your message.
The NLP communication model shows us that this works kind of like an infinite loop. Your external behavior triggers an internal response in someone else, which then causes them to react externally, and that triggers your next internal response. It just keeps going. It turns out, if the response you get isn't what you expected, you really can't blame the other person. Instead, you've got to be flexible. You have to change your input, your words, or your behavior to alter their internal response and finally break that cycle of misunderstanding.
Moving on to Section 2, the power of rapport, bridging realities.
To change that input effectively, we first have to build a bridge. And in NLP, that bridge is called rapport. You simply cannot influence or truly hear someone without it. Rapport is all about seeing eye to eye with someone and really connecting on their wavelength. Now, to be clear, rapport doesn't mean you have to agree with them on politics, religion, or even the issue at hand. It just means you respect their unique model of the world. You can verbally disagree with someone entirely, but still maintain rapport by matching their posture, their breathing, or their voice tone to show sincerity. And what NLP reveals here is wild. Nonverbal matching is actually far more powerful than verbal agreement.
Section 3. What is backtracking? This brings us to a conversational tool that absolutely proves you are truly engaged.
The core tool we're focusing on today serves as a sort of conversational martial art. Backtracking is the skill of restating key points using the other person's exact words, often matching their voice tone and body language. The crucial takeaway here is that backtracking uses the other person's exact momentum to pace them. It proves you are truly listening and that you respect their values. It isn't just summarizing, it is specifically using the very words they used, while subtly matching their physical delivery. You are quite literally speaking their own language back to them.
This technique is just incredibly useful in negotiations or really tense situations. By simply using phrases like, "Can I check that I understand?" or "Can I summarize so far?" and then following that up with their exact words, you provide tangible, undeniable evidence that you're paying attention. It pulls the conversation right out of that blame frame we talked about earlier and actively works towards an agreement by making the other person feel entirely validated and respected.
Section 4. Backtracking versus paraphrasing, the critical difference. Pay attention here, because this is where most miscommunications actually happen.
We have all been taught our whole lives to paraphrase, right? Well, in NLP, that can actually be a massive trap. When we fall into our default habit of paraphrasing, we're operating from a frame that basically says, I define what you said and what you meant. We change their words to fit our own understanding. And you know what? This often accidentally alienates people because it assumes you know better than they do about what they meant. Backtracking, on the other hand, operates from a frame of pure listening and respect. I am listening to you.
You really have to realize that people choose one word rather than another for a very specific purpose. They select the exact words that most precisely translate their internal thoughts into external communication. A specific word might have a slightly different meaning to them than it does to you. For example, if someone says they feel overwhelmed, and you paraphrase it as, "So you're saying you're busy," you have fundamentally changed their meaning, and boom, you will instantly break rapport.
Section 5. Honoring core values. To truly master backtracking, we have to learn to listen way past the surface.
NLP loves utilizing stories to bypass our logical barriers and speak directly to the unconscious. Just like that old Zen story about a master pouring tea into a cup that is already overflowing, you simply cannot truly hear someone else's core values if your mind is already full of your own judgments, opinions, and assumptions. You literally must empty your cup first to listen to what is truly important to the person sitting across from you.
So how do we actually know which exact words to backtrack? Well, it turns out we have to play detective. Backtracking isn't just acting like a parrot and mindlessly repeating everything they say. It's selectively repeating the key words that designate their values. You can usually spot these because they're marked out by a distinct change in the person's voice tone, or maybe an accompanying emphatic gesture. You should also be listening for predicates. Those are words that show if a person is visualizing, hearing, or feeling things. Matching these exact, value-laden words shows profound respect for their model of the world, and you do it without ever demanding they justify themselves to you.
Section 6. Putting it into practice. Let's look at exactly how to execute this framework in your next tough negotiation or disagreement.
By following these exact steps, you stop imposing your own reality. Step 1. Empty your cup and listen intently for those value words emphasized by gestures. Step 2. Adopt a posture and tone similar to theirs. Now, be careful not to mimic them too closely, just match enough to maintain that rapport. And finally, Step 3. Restate their point using their exact words, prefacing it with something gentle like, "So you were saying," or "Can I summarize?"
Now, this next part, absolutely vital. Remember to press the pause button after you backtrack. Silence is golden. Pausing for a moment gives the other person critical space to process what you just said. Letting that silence hang encourages them to elaborate. Because you use their exact words, they're going to feel fully understood, and the silence will naturally draw out deeper insights and a genuine willingness to collaborate.
So I have a challenge for you. I want you to try this conversational judo today. In your very next disagreement, actively resist the urge to paraphrase or just wait for your turn to speak. Empty your cup, find their value words, and backtrack them perfectly. Watch just how quickly the walls come down when people finally feel heard on their own terms. So are you ready to change the words and change the outcome? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.